right, send it in.
And welcome everybody to another spectacular episode of the Puckett Send It In podcast. I am Jake Gibson, joined alongside my friend and co-host Alex Krutchik. And Alex, this trend of the vibes being unbelievably high, I hope it never ends, as the Florida Panthers dust out the brooms, but with respect, a gentleman's sweep over the Tampa Bay Lightning in utterly dominant fashion in Game 5 by a score of 6-1, putting away the Tampa Bay Lightning for the first time in postseason history and doing it at home in front of the fans as well. I, for one, was disappointed that the Panthers didn't get the sweep at the Amalie Center in Game 4. They had an opportunity. They made some mistakes early, and that's really what cost them. But to ultimately come back home in front of the Panther faithful here in Sunrise, and obviously do something that I know every Panther fan in that building has wanted them to do for a while now, which is to beat Tampa Bay in a playoff series. To do it there, I feel like it's worth not sweeping them, instead doing it in Game 5 and giving the fans what they want.
Yeah, exactly. If they had swept Tampa in Game 4, we wouldn't have gotten the 2 Sasha Barkov goals. We wouldn't have gotten Panther fans serenading the Lightning fans with the hey, hey, goodbye chants at the end. And we wouldn't have gotten a handshake line at home. That was only the second time that the Panthers have clinched a series on home ice at Amerant Bank Arena, BB&T Center, Bank Atlantic Center, et cetera, et cetera. Because remember, they went on that run in '96. They were playing at the Miami Arena.
Yeah.
Then they went on a drought until 2 years ago when they beat Washington in Washington, and they lost against Tampa, which we'll talk about soon in the next series. Last year, they won in Boston. They clinched it in Tampa, or clinched it in Toronto, and they clinched it here in Sunrise against Carolina. So this was only the second time that they have clinched a series at home. So that was also cool to see a victorious handshake line in Sunrise. It was just a great time. I was there. I was our boots on the ground coverage. It was a tremendous game, and you can feel it from the players and the fans. Like, not just the excitement of winning a playoff series, but also it felt like a torch had been passed and it felt like a weight had been lifted.
And, it makes you wonder if the Florida Panthers had played the Toronto Maple Leafs in the first round and the same result happened, they beat them in 5, the fans would be like, all right, that's awesome. We took down Toronto. We're moving on. We're probably going to take on Boston in the second round. Now there's that added bonus of the fact that they did it against their biggest rival in hockey. Sometimes we've wondered, who is Florida's biggest rival? Do they have a real rivalry? Who is it? It's clearly Tampa. But in order for a rivalry to be a rivalry, and unfortunately I hate to bring FIU and FAU into this, but a good rivalry, there needs to be both teams need to get their fair share of wins, especially in the most important games. And for Florida, they had never done that in the postseason. Prior to this, the first time the Panthers took on the Lightning in the playoffs, I believe Tampa beat them like in either 5 or 6 games. And obviously, when Florida won the President's Trophy, they were swept by Tampa in the second round, which really, really sucks. It's still probably my least favorite memory as a Panther, even worse than losing the Stanley Cup last year. I don't know. Those are kind of close, actually. But regardless, my point is that the fact that we did this against Tampa over any other team in the NHL in the first round is unbelievably satisfying. And again, I hope that this is just the start of things to come for this Panthers squad here in the postseason. Because unfortunately, for as good as Tampa was, and obviously Tampa is a great team, obviously a very what's the word I'm looking for? Very experienced team in the postseason. Obviously, they're always going to be good. They're going to give you 100%, 10%. It's only going to get harder for the Panthers from here on out. Tampa was just the appetizer. Now you're going to have your main entree in the second round with either Toronto or Boston, and that series is still yet to be determined. But this was obviously a series that Florida, obviously they had to win, but they had to, not struggle against a team like Tampa, and they didn't. And in that game 5, they were dominant. The Tampa Bay had almost zero. They had like no chance of winning game 5. That's all I'm going to say. Tampa Bay was completely out of it. Florida was dominant, and it was just a classic beatdown, stress-free hockey, which I always love. I always love.
Yeah, it never truly felt like Tampa was ever in control of the series. Like it began with that first period in game 1, where a lot of us were saying, myself included, it was the best period that the Panthers had played all season. That's how the series started. The only time it really felt like Tampa had control of a single game was in game 4, which is, I don't want to say to be expected, but it happens. Game 4 is the hardest game to win in hockey because the other team is playing a game 7 while you're playing a game 4. But yeah, it was pretty stress-free hockey. And a big reason for that was because other than Stamkos on the power play, there was none of their stars really were great, other than Vasilevsky, of course. But as far as the skaters, I didn't think Victor Hedman was a huge factor. Braden Point was a ghost. Kucherov was okay. I just didn't see a whole lot from their stars. And I think that's where Florida won, on top of course, the performance from Bobrovsky. And then if you want to talk about units as opposed to individual players, the penalty kill for Florida was amazing.
Yeah, so that's one of the topics I wanted to bring up about game 5 specifically. Once again, Florida kind of got sloppy, if you will. Is 4 penalties in a game bad? I'm sorry, 4 penalties is they committed 4 penalties. Is 4 penalties in a game in a playoff hockey game too much for a team to commit? It's kind of up in the air. I'm going to say yes, and the reason I say yes is because we saw Florida and how they played in game 1 of the series and thought, okay, maybe they're going to get things together and just not commit the silly penalties for the rest of the series. That didn't really happen, and I think that is still a problem with this Panthers team that a really good team like Carolina or New York could what's the right word? They could expose if and when they're going to play them in the playoffs. However, I'll say that Florida's penalty kill is like one of the greatest at times they're like one of the greatest penalty kills I've seen. In general, it's been a long time since I've seen a penalty kill that impressive. And granted, Tampa Bay's penalty kill was almost equally as good. Florida's only real mistake so far in the power play was obviously in game 3 when they gave up. And actually, I take this back. It wasn't even the penalty kill. It was the power play offense that gave up a shorthanded goal to Tampa Bay. Now, obviously, Florida turned around and did the same thing in game 5. I believe, who was it that got that short? It was Barkov that got the shorthanded goal in game 5 that helped break away from the Lightning. So this team has had its ups and downs, but it is nice to know that the penalty kill for Florida is maybe the most, aside from Bobrovsky, is the most reliable aspect of the team. And by God, that's going to do this team so much when they get into those really physical games with a team like Carolina, for example. I think obviously is just also a very physical team. They were very physical in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and I don't expect that to be any different. So, man, it's just what a privilege it is for a team like Florida to have as great a penalty kill as they do, because it just, I think more than anything, it kind of just shows how loaded Florida is as a team right now, even more so than last year. They're just kind of a stacked roster, and they proved that against Tampa.
Yeah, the stacked roster is really what I think is going to be the difference in any series that they play from here on out. I remember like a few weeks ago on this pod, I was talking about, I'm concerned about the third line, the fourth line, because you're not getting a whole lot of secondary scoring. You're not getting a whole lot of secondary production. That really changed this series. Like, even Kevin Stenlund had a nice dangle to get through the Tampa defense and into the offensive zone late in the game, and then fed Evan Rodriguez for the goal to get even more insurance goals up there. It was a really, really good performance from their depth guys this series.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny. We haven't even seen, obviously, we did not see a player like Stolarz at all in this series. As far as some other players, Reinhart had some good games. For the most part, Tampa Bay in games 3 and 4 did an excellent job at sort of limiting Reinhart's success, which and so even though they did that, of course, you have other players like Kachuk and Verhaeghe who pretty much stepped up and took the mantle and became the leading scorers for this Panthers squad. It's just amazing how Florida, they have so many great attackers that even though Tampa did their best to limit, obviously, the Florida's best right now, which would be Sam Reinhart, it ultimately meant nothing, and they still had 6 goals dunked on them in the final game of the series. So some things I wanted to talk about in that game 5. Obviously, there's not a whole lot we can really discuss. It was a 6-1 win. It was scoreless in the first period, which I thought was kind of interesting. I believe that was the first time this whole series that no one scored in the first period, which is usually both teams have electric offenses to start games. So that was surprising to see. But obviously it picked up in the third, or it picked up in the second, and then the third was it was a wash. So I don't know. Offensive, again, it's one of those cases where do you think the Panthers shine the most? Was it obviously Florida's offense, which I again dropped half a dozen goals in the game, which is absolutely insane, especially for a playoff game? Or was it Bobrovsky and this defense just absolutely denying a desperate Tampa team the ability to come back and potentially, I don't know, do a reverse sweep or do something against this team? They couldn't do it.
Yeah, I think that it was weird because it was 6-1. You got 2 goals from Verhaeghe, 2 goals from Barkov, but it was really a much closer game than that. And both coaches said that after the game, like it didn't play like a 6-1 game. Like you said, it was scoreless after 1. Even after 2, it was 2-1.
Yeah.
I think that where the Panthers won was the second time that a goal was waved off. And it was in the second period. In the second period, it looked like Mikhail Sergachev got a slap shot into the back of the net, immediately waved off for goaltender interference because they said that Anthony Cirelli of Tampa was in the crease and making contact with Bobrovsky. Mm-hmm. That was the second goal that was taken off the board. The first goal was taken off the board because of a challenge by Florida.
Yeah.
That was in the first period, and it was something similar. It was Anthony Duclair, former Panther, in the crease making contact with Bob again. So that second time that they waved off that goal, I think that's where the Panthers won it. I think that's where the momentum – the Panthers already had the momentum, but that was when the Panthers took complete control of everything, not just on the ice, but also in terms of just the general vibes.
Yeah. By the way, that's an underrated aspect of this series. Paul Maurice was 2-0 on challenges this series, and John Cooper of the Tampa Bay Lightning was 0-2. So obviously not the biggest part of the game, but still it's very impressive to see Paul Maurice's ability to make sure that if he's going to challenge, he's going to get it right. I did see a lot of Tampa Bay fans on social media complain about that in Game 5. By the way, the penalties, or not the penalties, I should say the overturned goals. And I don't know. After looking at some of the replays and the analysis from other content creators, and there was definitely some instances where it felt like worse cases of goalie interference were not called compared to what we saw in Game 5. Not to mention a couple of goals for Florida that also looked like you could argue could have also been called for goalie interference and were not called as well. So I don't think it was a really well officiated game in Game 5, but obviously we are the winners, so we get to be happy about the results. But definitely, overall, the officiating in this series sometimes was kind of wonky, and I think it boiled over in Game 5.
Yeah, it was. I felt like it was mostly a well-called series. The goaltender interference was a little soft. Although I do agree it was called by the letter of the law. But, not going to complain. Panthers got the better end of that. So I'm fine with it. Not going to complain.
No, we shouldn't. Obviously, if it goes against Florida in the second round, we might be a bit angry about that. But let's not think negatively about that. Alex, I really loved your recap on Game 5, specifically how you sort of turned it into Alexander Barkov exercising his demons and punctuating the first round winner. And you know what? This might be the perfect segment into our CAT scan for today's episode, which of course is none other than Alexander Barkov. He was here. He's been here since the very beginning when Florida was losing to Tampa Bay in the postseason, and now he was probably the biggest playmaker for the Florida Panthers against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Earned the first star in Game 5, 2 goals and an assist, including that shorthander, which again blew absolutely all momentum away from the Lightning to give up a shorthanded goal like that. But I think that Barkov, and like you said, Barkov knew that the Dragon was slayed. That goes super hard, Alex. And Alexander Barkov played his butt off, and he was magical. He looked like prime Wayne Gretzky out there, pretty much dominating that game.
It was your prototypical Alexander Barkov game because he was great on the penalty kill.
Yeah.
He scored a shorthanded goal, and he was able to tap in a goal at the very end when it mattered most. He even got an assist, and it was just amazing. I thought that what he did that night was so great, especially because fairly or unfairly, I mean, personally, I think it's unfairly, I think that he had been labeled as like not a playoff performer or not clutch. I think that was so ridiculous to pin on him. And so to see him be able to do that when it mattered most, not just within the context of the series, but within the context of the franchise.
Yeah.
It was so important to see him do that. And he knew it too, because he pumped his fist. He hit a nice little celly after his second goal.
Love it.
And you never see that from him. He's such a quiet, reserved guy. You never see that from him. But you saw it on Monday. I thought that was great.
He's probably just thinking what we're all thinking, that we're just tired of having to play that stupid team in Tampa in the postseason, and how relieving it is that for once we don't have to witness the heartbreak of having to take on the Lightning in the playoffs. So yeah. By the way, Alex, we did postseason predictions with Alex Baumgartner not that long ago. I seem to recall someone correctly predicting that the Florida Panthers would win in 5 games over the Lightning.
You did. And I thought that there's no way it ends that quickly because I thought that the Lightning would put up a bigger fight.
I thought so too. And you know what? I still think it's not Vasilevsky's fault. Vasilevsky played an absolutely unreal postseason. Obviously, you look at the 6-1 final score, but 2 of those goals up for Florida were empty netters, so he gave up 4 goals in that game. But still, I thought defensively, Tampa did a great job, especially in games 1 and 2. Game 1 was won with minutes to go, and then Game 2 was won in overtime. Game 3 boiled over, and then, of course, they took Game 4 in pretty convincing fashion, all things considered. Tampa Bay played the way they had to win the series, and it still was not enough to get by Florida. I think just straight up, Florida was the better team. They exposed Tampa in the areas that they could, and Tampa was obviously, it could have been a trap series for Florida, especially with the history of those two teams. But the Panthers just took care of business, and Tampa was only in it for like one game, and that was it.
Yeah, the Panthers were the better team. They were the deeper team. Their third lines and fourth line were very good. They got scoring from all lines.
Yeah.
Here I'm pulling up the stats right now. They got scoring from Tarasenko. They got scoring from Evan Rodriguez towards the end. They got a goal from Steven Lawrence. Everyone contributed. No one was a passenger, and whoever wasn't scoring was still contributing either on the penalty kill or on 5-on-5, just facilitating things, winning board battles, forechecking real good. It was just a fantastic series for everyone. Like, I don't think there was anyone that I could criticize from that series. And I'm sorry, there was a stat that I was trying to pull up before that I wasn't able to at first, but I got it for you now for Alex Barkov. He's got this is courtesy of Panthers Muse on Twitter,
Okay.
at FL Panthers Muse. Most takeaways so far in the 2024 playoffs, Alexander Barkov leads with 9.
9?
So it was a very prototypical series from him. It was the exact kind of series that he's so good at. It was the kind of performance that when he plays a certain way, you win more often than you lose. So I thought that it was very impressive by him.
And lastly, shout out Matthew Tkachuk, man. My God, what has Matthew Tkachuk done to this Panthers franchise in the postseason? In 25 games of work for the Florida Panthers in the playoffs, he's contributed to 14 goals, 19 assists, 33 total points, a plus 16 differential, and not to mention 5-game winners. That is absolutely unreal that Tkachuk is already making himself a case for being a top 3 Panther of all time. And he's just in his second year with the team.
Yeah, what general manager Bill Zito did for this franchise and getting Tkachuk over here, like, it's seriously, I think, the biggest move in franchise history. Because remember, the biggest thing that people were criticizing the Panthers for over the last 3 years before Tkachuk got here was that there's no finishers on this team. There's a lot of skilled guys, but there's no dogs. There's no guys that can just take over a series. And they got one in Matthew Tkachuk. Like, he's kind of like the Jimmy Butler of the Florida Panthers, where he's already pretty good during the regular season. And then in the playoffs, he just turns on to this otherworldly guy who can just do anything that you need him to on the ice.
Yeah. Alrighty then, let's take a look around the NHL, and obviously we need to talk about who the Panthers will be taking on in the second round, as it's still to be determined. Now, Boston, we know about Boston. They're a good team. They got some players like, Pasta and whatnot, but they've had a habit of blowing playoff series. We saw that last year, blew a 3-1 lead to Florida in the first round, and now they look to be doing the same against Toronto in this series. Currently, I need to check the score. I need to refresh here. It's the third period right now. This is the only NHL game, playoff game going on right now. The Maple Leafs are beating the Bruins 1-0. 9 minutes to go in the third period. If I don't know, if before the show ends and they score, we'll let you know. But Boston, keep in mind, Toronto in Game 5 did not have Austin Matthews. They don't have Austin Matthews now either, and they're still finding ways to beat Boston. I feel like as soon as Game 5 ended for Florida, I don't know about you, but I certainly feel like, all right, we're going to have to gear up, get ready to take on Boston. It's going to be a rematch of the first round last year. All of a sudden, Tampa Bay is somehow pulling a Florida Panthers and defying the odds against Boston. There's a good chance Boston might blow this series.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Boston. I think it's a very intangible thing what's going on with them. I think that I don't usually pin this on teams. I don't think it's fair, but I think that in this case it's fair. I think that they are playing very tight because they remember last year. Brad Marchand, a few days ago, a reporter asked him about the 3-1 lead and the context of last year and the context of this year. And before the reporter could even finish his question, Marchand cut him off and said, I'm going to cut you off right there. this is a different team. He starts going off and off about how this is a different team. We're not worried about that. We're not even thinking about it, which kind of makes me think that they are thinking about it. The fact that he cut off the reporter and kind of, had to wedge his way in like that. I think that's exactly what's going on because they looked very tight on Tuesday where their offense could barely get anything going. They got one goal past Joseph Wall. Tonight, they only had one shot on goal through the first period, and then even halfway through the second, they only had a couple. They're not getting anything in there. They did wind up with 12 shots on goal in the second period. That's great. Yeah. Right now, they have 8 through 12 minutes in the third. But they're getting shut out, and they only scored 1 goal in their last game. I don't know what it is. There's nothing that I'm seeing from the Toronto defense that's excellent. I mean, they're playing well, but to allow 1 shot per goal in the first period, like they're not playing that well.
I saw a comment as I was waiting for the show to start like 10, 20 minutes ago, or 10, 20 minutes before we began at 10 o'clock, I was scrolling through Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and I saw this random guy comment. Honestly, the Florida would absolutely dog walk either Boston or Toronto right now. And it really got me thinking, if you're the Florida Panthers, obviously you're watching this on the sofa, the team's trying to get healthy, get ready to go for round 2. Who would you rather take on right now in the second round? Are you taking on this Toronto team, which despite their best player is showing a whole lot of fight and grit and grittiness right now? Or would you want to take on a Boston team that, I mean, obviously you know what you're going to get with them. You're going to get a very solid group, but all of a sudden they're out of it. And so I feel like no matter who you choose, Florida has got to be looking at this series like, man, we have proven that not only can we beat both of these series, we can absolutely whack them.
Yeah, I would probably rather play Boston just because should Boston win tonight,
yes,
they will be limping in. Like even if they win tonight, they're not looking great while doing it. And they're doing this while healthy. Like, I mean, they've got a couple injuries down, like in their bottom 4 defensemen and their fourth line, I believe it is.
Yeah.
But they're healthy. For the most part, they're healthy, and they're still pulling this. Toronto, on the other hand, if they should win this series, that means that they would have won 3 in a row. They're hot. And they were missing Austin Matthews this entire time, or almost this entire time. You have to figure that he's going to come back, if not in time for the second round, like pretty soon towards the beginning of the second round. I wouldn't want to play that team. They're basically just, if they should win, they're basically just doing what the Panthers were doing last year.
Yeah.
No one would want to play the Panthers at that point.
Despite that, obviously you look towards the regular season. Boston, I don't think Florida beat Boston in the regular season.
No, they didn't.
And Florida did they split with Toronto in the regular season? Regardless, the last game of the regular season, Florida put on a clinic at home against the Maple Leafs. So it's tough. It's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, granted, I love the fact that the series is not over, which means that Florida has this time to heal for some of their players to get back in it. I know Coach was talking earlier today about Stolarz and how while he's not injured, he definitely took a shot at, that area. So hopefully Stolarz can get a couple extra days to walk that off. But I'm just looking at this series. I feel really confident. When the playoffs started, I was like, oh man, I do not want to have to take on Boston in the second round. Now I really want to, and maybe it's just because personally, the Heat obviously lost to Boston. The Boston Celtics in the first round. It was a wash. I want to see Boston cry. I want to see the Boston fans mad. I want them to. I wanted them to have a reason to hate South Florida all over again, and this would be it. Florida just dog walking the Bruins in the second round, which I feel like all was looking more and more like that's what will likely happen if the Bruins win this series. And it does look like honestly, I think it's going to happen. I think Toronto's going to not just win this game, but win in game 7, just because Toronto has like the eye of the tiger right now. against the Bruins, which is crazy.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the funniest possible outcome for this series.
This is
I think it would be Toronto forcing a game 7, scaring the hell out of the Bruins, but then still losing in game 7. So the Bruins are still seen as frauds,
Yeah.
but Toronto still gets their heart broken.
But then again, back-to-back 3-1 chokes by Boston in the playoffs in the first round would be ridiculous.
That would be pretty funny.
Anyway,
it's almost the point where I would feel bad. Almost.
I'm not. It's not even close for me. Anyway, looking around the rest of the NHL, this is the only game going on tonight. Yesterday, a couple of games happened. Dallas beat Vegas and is forcing a game 6. Currently, Dallas leads the series 3-2. The Oilers beat the LA Kings to win that series in 5 games. So, as it currently stands, here are all the playoff scenarios. So, Florida beat Tampa in 5 games. Boston is currently taking on Toronto in game number 6. The Washington Capitals decided not to show up to the Stanley Cup playoffs and got bounced by the Rangers, to no one's shock. Carolina took down the Islanders in 5 games. Again, not shocking there. Like I said, Dallas is leading the series 3-2 over Vegas. I think this might be the biggest shocker so far of the first round of the playoffs. It was Colorado's ability to just absolutely blank Winnipeg and beat them in 5 games. Aside from that, Vancouver currently leads the Predators 3-2. That might, aside from this Boston-Toronto that series, that might be the most interesting playoff series so far. Just entertainment-wise, this is Vancouver and Nashville. They're absolutely going at it. Then Edmonton beat Los Angeles in 5 games. So that's your situation. Again, Alex, I'm shocked at how Winnipeg just absolutely, despite having really high expectations, absolutely getting nuked by Colorado that way.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed not to see more of Winnipeg just because I think the atmosphere at their arena is so great. I love the whiteout, the Avalanche, whatever they call it. Well, I guess they don't call it the Avalanche.
No, not against Colorado.
It looks like an avalanche, but they probably shouldn't call it that. It's no, but I love the atmosphere there, and I was really hoping for a deeper run from them because I want to see more of them.
Yeah.
I also just I really like Connor Hellebuck's game as well. One of my favorite goaltenders to watch. So it's disappointing that their season's over, and surprising, quite frankly, that they only got 1 win out of that. I mean, I know Colorado's great, but Winnipeg I thought was great too.
Vegas won game 1 and 2 of their series and have since lost 3 straight games, and they might lose their 4th straight in game 6 as well. I'm kind of shocked at how Vegas got to such a great head start in their playoff series, but it looks like they're about to blow it at the same time. So obviously, as a Panthers fan, c'est la vie, good riddance, get the hell out of here, Vegas. But yeah, a little bit shocked at how that series has played as well.
Yeah. Did you see Dallas? The Dallas social media admin was flaming this Lightning fan on Twitter.
I didn't. What happened? What the hell happened?
So basically, some fan came on and was just tweeting, pictures of the negative pictures of the Dallas Stars, and the Dallas Stars admin was like, "What time did the Lightning play today?"
Oh, okay. That's one of those classic responses. When you said Dallas on social media, I thought of this thing that the Mavericks and Clippers series did. Like the Clippers posted like an advertisement outside their arena, like it was an airline advertisement from like the distance from Dallas to Cancun, and then Dallas came back and absolutely destroyed Los Angeles. But regardless, that's the wrong sport. So, who from the West scares you the most? By the way, if the Panthers were to do their job and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, who scares you the most from who's remaining in the West?
I think it's still Vegas just because of how all around good they are. Edmonton scares me just because Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, I think, are the two best players in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what, like, there's Nashville and Vancouver don't scare me. They both strike me as teams that are fun to watch but aren't really built.
One-hit wonders, if you will.
One-hit wonders. Very fun to watch. I don't think either of them are built for a long run in the playoffs. I'm just still scared of that laundry. I'm scared of the laundry of the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm scared of just the jersey. You know what I mean? What about yourself?
Night jersey.
Yeah, I don't like the glitter. Why are they putting
they got
glitter
some
on
weird uniforms.
They're like trying to be like Notre Dame, where they put the gold flakes on the helmet. Haven't won a championship.
I just don't like the team name. Like, you could have had so many cool names for a team based in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Golden Knights. Congratulations. Like, really.
I think the reasoning is that the owner of the team is a West Point graduate, so okay, but
thank you for your service. Your team name sucks.
Like, obviously, the Seattle Kraken is so much better. That is such a cool branding identity.
Well, it's better than the Utah hockey team.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about next. How for the last few episodes we talked about the situation in Arizona and how the Coyotes said they were committed to staying, but now, as it turns out, they're going to be moving to Salt Lake City and I guess play in the same arena as the Utah Jazz.
An arena, by the way, that has like thousands of obstructed seats.
What a gut punch! What a gut punch to the diehard fans of the Coyotes, and obviously there are probably plenty of diehard Coyotes fans in Arizona. Don't let what the ownership say. Don't let them fool you. There were a lot. The fact that they had their team ripped from them like that is absolutely insane.
And the
you
fact
know what,
that
Alex?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
The fact that their social media kept insinuating, like up until the final week, oh, Arizona hockey is here to stay in Arizona. Don't you worry. And then the next day, it's announced that they're moving. Like, what's wrong with you guys?
It was handled so horribly. And again, I obviously I don't wish that Salt Lake, whatever they're going to be called. I kind of like the Salt Lake Ice. The Salt Lake Ice sounds pretty cool. But I don't wish him any ill will. I'm just kind of shocked that that's how that was how the death of the Coyotes happened. But I want to bring this back to the Panthers for a second, Alex, because I remember the days where, attendance was not great for the Panthers in those 2000s to 2010s. The attendance was just not there, and there were really worries that Florida was going to do the same thing at some point. But Florida began to win. They built when Bill Zito stepped in, and the Panthers began building a really excellent culture, very similar to what you see. Obviously, the Heat, you have that Heat culture. The Panthers have their own kind of culture. And in recent years, they have amazing ownership. Their management is some of the best in the NHL. Obviously, the coaching with Paul Maurice has been stellar, and the team is it's a hard-nosed, gritty, tough team. That the players sacrifice themselves for the ultimate goal, which is to win and be a winning team. And not to mention, they've become one of the top spots in free agency that players just want to play for because, like I said, they're a really tough team, and obviously South Florida, you get to live here in South Florida. I'm just saying, Florida used to be like that at one point, but now obviously Florida, I think the Florida Panthers are well off staying in Sunrise for years and decades to come. Unfortunately, unlike that team in the Phoenix, which is now moving to Salt Lake. So we've come a long way, Alex. But the job's not done. Until we raise that cup, the job is not done.
Exactly. One step closer.
12
more wins.
Would you have wanted to beat any other team in the first round, by the way, in 5 games?
No, I think you needed to beat Tampa. I think I get very I almost said superficial. I get very superstitious when it comes to baseball and when it comes to hockey. And I feel like in hockey especially, if there's a team that has had your number in the playoffs, I think that you need to beat that team before you win a cup. Like last year, the hockey gods saw that the Panthers didn't have to beat the Lightning to get to the cup final. So they decided it wasn't the Panthers' time yet. Now they've beaten their demons. They've exercised their demons. And so now I think now they're ready.
They're ready.
And they did it in the first round, so we got it out of the way.
They did. What would be the equivalent for the Marlins? Would it be like the Braves?
Yeah, the Braves.
Well, best of luck with that.
It's going to take a little while longer. Well, they just swept the Rockies.
That's
so,
cool.
So Marlins are back in business. They're undefeated this month.
Maybe it sounds like we're stalling here, but there's only 2 minutes left to go in this game between Boston and Toronto. I don't know about breakaway for Toronto 1v1, and they score. Toronto gets their insurance goal with 2 minutes to go.
Oh my
Boston
God.
did not take out their goalie yet, and a one-on-one scenario. I don't know who scored the goal, but it was a breakaway, and they made him pay. Oh, it was Nylander. That got probably the
wow, nice outlet pass. Jesus.
That was ridiculous. So just look at the replay. My God. That was a thing of beauty. So it looks like, Toronto's gonna win game 6 and force a game 7. And Boston has the opportunity to blow back-to-back 3-1 series leads.
I love that camera shot of all the fans outside Scotiabank Arena.
It's been lit. There's this one TikToker that I don't know if he's a Boston fan or not, but he records the reactions to the people in that crowd after every game so far this series. Maybe you've seen one. Maybe you've seen who I'm referring to, Alex. But some people have given him hell, and obviously when Toronto's winning, it's hype as hell in that crowd. But with 2 minutes to go, obviously Boston's gonna have to take out their goalie in a matter of seconds, but it's not looking good for the Bruins here. I cannot believe what I'm looking at, Alex.
Oh yeah, here he goes. Yeah, they just pulled Swayman. Oh boy. All right.
Yeah, okay. We don't want to leave you like that, but it is interesting to note how the series is going, because obviously doing our research, and you all should too. Is that the empty netter? No, it's just wide. But a minute 38 that game is in. All right, Alex. Don't mean to take you guys. By the way, to the fans who have been watching again, can't thank you guys enough. It's been super fun to cover the Florida Panthers this way on a podcast, and hopefully the good times keep rolling for this Panthers team as they look to take on someone in the second round, whether it's Boston or Toronto, and of course we will provide coverage then. So, Alex, what else do we have to say tonight other than the vibes are at an all-time high?
I don't know if you can hear my cat meowing right now, but I think he's a big Panthers fan, so he's got a lot of stuff.
I was about to say, is he not the mascot of the Puckett Send It In podcast?
I don't think he's the mascot. I think he wants a panelist position.
He has a lot of things to say. He wants to explain the 5 reasons why he hates Tampa Bay so much, like all of us. All right, Alex. Again, fun episode. And again, for everyone watching, have a great night. Go watch some hockey. And let's go home, baby.